Does the Immigration Minister have a Sroubek 2.0 on his hands? The opposition says yes, but Iain Lees-Galloway says the latest case has nothing to do with the one that caused him major political headaches last year. Mr Lees-Galloway ended up reversing his decision to grant the Czech drug smuggler Karel Sroubek residence, and now he's granted residence to a man with multiple drink driving convictions. The National Party says that's unacceptable, but it twice gave the same man temporary work visas while in power. Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson.
Karel Sroubek is a name the Minister Iain Lees-Galloway would be happy to never hear again. But up it came today as National's Mark Mitchell went on the attack over the Minister's decision to grant residence to a man with 6 drink-driving convictions.
I think it's far too easy for people to arrive in this country and tell us these stories about the fact that they're at risk, and we've seen that very clearly with Sroubek, when the Minister didn't go back and get the right advice.
National's leader Simon Bridges says residence gives him access to a range of entitlements.
What does Iain Lees-Galloway do when he gets the case in front of him? When he has an absolute discretion to do whatever he likes, he says, "Here, mate, have the keys of the kingdom. Stay here as long as you want. You want to go on a benefit, you feel free to. You want to vote at our elections, you feel free to." It's not good enough.
But the man in question has the status of a protected person under international law. That means he can't be deported from New Zealand. The Minister says he's satisfied the man would be at risk of torture if returned to his home country.
Sufficiently sure to believe that deporting them would have been a breach of the International Convention Against Torture. So was the National Party when they were in government.
Mr Lees-Galloway got into trouble in the Karel Sroubek case for agreeing he'd be unsafe back in his home country. That was before media reports revealed he had travelled back a number of times. But he says this case is different. He told Parliament the man had been in New Zealand for about 20 years and rolling over temporary visas just created more bureaucracy. But National's Mark Mitchell says there are important differences.
You have enormous privileges awarded to you with a New Zealand residency that you don't have with a working visa or a temporary working visa. Well, all that you get access to all government support. You get access to ACC, you get access to WINS.
But there are also questions for National. RNZ understands the man was granted protected person status in 2012 and has not had a conviction since then. Mr Lees-Galloway says National granted the man 2 temporary work visas while in power in 2013 and 2016. Former Immigration Minister Michael Woodhouse granted the first one and says he has no recollection of the 6-year-old case.
Which suggests to me it didn't have the elements of the conditions that were before the current minister, and that's not surprising. In the 6 years since I was asked to consider the case, there's very likely to have been other things that have occurred, so it's difficult for me to comment, but it certainly wasn't a remarkable case at that point.
Simon Bridges says regardless, the questions are for the minister to answer, not the National Party.
I wasn't leader of the National Party then. And here's the thing, that if Iain Lees-Galloway or the government are indirectly dripping out little bits and tidbits on this case, how about they come clean and Iain Lees-Galloway does some interviews on the record where he answers whether this man is on a benefit or whether this man has been to prison.
In 2017, a Zimbabwean man calling himself William Nduku left New Zealand after Mr Woodhouse declined to give him a work visa. A self-proclaimed former member of the Mugabe secret police and having publicly admitted to murder, rape and torture, he was given the status of a protected person. National's Mark Mitchell was asked if he was concerned the man in this recent case had a similar background.
Number one, we don't know his identity, we don't know where he's from, but we do know that we have a history of people coming to this country, lying to us about the circumstances in which they've come here for, and they get awarded residencies, and unfortunately it's happening under this government.
Under the law, there's a prohibition on anyone making comment about the details of the man's case or circumstances, including a question to the minister about the possibility of him being a terrorist or a war criminal.
It potentially would be a breach of Section 151 of the Immigration Act. I cannot give you any details that could potentially identify the person.
Mr Lees-Galloway says the decision to give the man protected person status, meaning he cannot be deported, was taken by the Refugee Status Branch of Immigration New Zealand, not by him as Minister. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jane Patterson.